Hey YouTubers, it's Jordan Pure aka JP Dillon. Getting to be summertime here in San Diego, so we're dragging out fans again. This guy I scored at the Big 3 back in February, and it's obviously been repainted. Very likely it was the same color originally as the little Lasko emblem here. Somebody painted it red and painted the blades silver. And they just did kind of a slap job to sell it. I got it really cheap. It was a $10 fine, so I'm not really going to cry about it. We're here to service it today because it has some major issues. First and foremost is this classy repair on the power plug here. And although it looks like it's no big deal, when you manipulate the cord, it cuts out and you can hear arcing inside and it gets very hot. Secondly, the motor is horribly noisy and off balance. You can see the blades wobbling there. And it shakes the fan to the point where it literally starts turning on its own. You hear the scraping bearing and how quickly it comes to a stop. So, let's take it apart. Let's fix its ailments. Okay, so removing the 4 screws that hold the back cage on reveals that the entire motor housing, cage, and blade assembly comes out as one. That makes it a little easier to service. Now immediately the first thing I see is that the swaging responsible for holding the blades on there has come loose. And I see that nice big gap, and when I grab the blade, the gap changes. Let's see if I can get the camera up here so you guys can see it better. There's a lot of play in that. A lot. So, what I'm probably going to end up doing is after I take this off, we're going to square it up best as possible. Maybe hammer on it a little bit so that the swaging fits in there best possible. Clean it up and JB weld it front and back, just to hold it in place so that the damn thing doesn't wobble so much, because that's a bad thing. So let's get the blades off and let's get the motor off. It looks like the blades unscrew somehow, so let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Because it's true, the blades just unscrew from the shaft. You can see the motor shaft is threaded here. Doesn't look too bad. Yeah. A little bit of marring, but not bad. This came right off with no issues, probably because it was off before so they could paint it. And then if we wiggle and jiggle this, it's most certainly loose inside, so we'll get to fixing that. Looks like all we have to do to get the motor out is the 2 retaining nuts here. The switch and motor assembly come off as one, so let's get to that now too. Okay, so with the motor out, you can see it's a pretty simple job here. It's just a regular induction 2-speed motor. You've got your 2-speed switch there, wire nuts. Wow, there we go. That's pretty awesome right there. Looky, looky, looky. Come on, camera. There we go. They pinched that damn thing, and the insulation broke. That's bare wire hanging out there. Cool, so one side of the AC line was tied right to the case. That's awesome. Good thing I had it plugged into a transformer. Holy shit. So somebody would have put their hand on that, touched something else, and that would have been a nice 120 volts for them. As far as the condition of the motor, absolutely pathetic. This is so sticky it's almost frozen. So grease, oils, whatever, this all needs to come apart. Which also looks very simple. It's just nut here, nut there. And then we'll probably have to separate the halves of the case, which could or could not be fun. We'll see. It depends on if it's pressed together or not, like the dual motors are. So let's see if we can get the thing apart. Okay, so we got the motor apart. It did require a little bit of persuasion. I used a hammer and a screwdriver carefully inserted at an angle like that. Wailed on it a couple times symmetrically and got the halves apart. Pretty much a condition that I would expect for an old thing. Just motor sludge. The front bearing is obviously really bad because the shaft is almost stuck in there, although it hasn't spun the bearing yet, so that's good. I think the way I need to get this out, since they painted with the motor in there, is scrape all this off, use some very fine sandpaper to smooth it out, and then we'll get the bearing out and see if we can clean it up, re-oil it, and check it again. Okay, well that was easy. I just took an X-Acto knife, really sharp one, and just scraped all the paint away. And looking at the bearing surfaces, this actually looks pretty good. There's no significant marring or anything like that. And the oil race isn't dry. It's just probably hasn't been oiled in decades. So we'll clean all this up. Use some isopropanol or denatured alcohol, either way. The back bearing here is also looking pretty good. But my only concern is just the ugly looking windings. Look at that. Now most of that's probably paint, but it's just kind of yuck. I don't see any deterioration of the enamel, and there hasn't been signs of overheating. It's not like the tape's blackened or the windings are discolored in different areas, so this is probably safe to use. We'll just clean up the bearings and put it back together, and then we'll see what happens with it. Alright, so we got the bearings cleaned up with some oil in them. Nice spin down time, no more noise. Doing pretty good. So let's get the motor back together and do a brief test, and then we'll concentrate on getting the blade assembly epoxied so that it doesn't get all wobbly on us again. Alright, so she's all back together now. And as we can see, the motor has a nice quiet bearing and a good spin down time. Beautiful. I've got it plugged into the variac here. Turn it on, turn it up. Wow, really quiet. Induction feels pretty strong. You can feel the vibration of the motor. We turn it off. Takes a long time to spin down. Cool. Alright, so this motor's done. Let's address the problem with the blades now. So as we noted before with the blades, the problem was just that the centerpiece here is very loose. So what we're going to do is get it kind of twisted a little bit and so that it's tight and swaging again. And then we'll abrade the perimeter here, and we'll use some JB Quick on it since it doesn't have to have a huge amount of tensile strength. And then we'll also do a small amount on the other side here, but there's not as much grip here, so it's not going to be as meaningful as doing it on the back side, where A, you can't see it, and B, there's more surface area to attach the epoxy to. And this has to be cleaned up and abraded, so we'll do that first, and then we'll mix up our JB Weld and put it on there. So hopefully you guys can see this while I do it. JB Weld is an excellent thing, but you have to prep the surfaces right. If you don't prep the surfaces, it's kind of useless. You just want to try to clean off all the oil and grease that you can. Again, denatured alcohol, isopropanol, things that evaporate quickly. You can use acetone, but acetone has harmful fumes, and it's maybe a little bit more effective, but is it at the risk of your health? Do you want to wear a respirator every time you use it? Probably not. That's still a little dirty. And we're using the JB Quick because A, it doesn't need a huge amount of tensile strength since it's just a very light aluminum blade. We have a lot of surface area to work with, and I don't want to wait 24 hours for it to dry. If you want to use something stronger, or if these were heavier blades or something like that, it might be a good idea. And you can see, well, maybe you can't see, Let's focus it, and let's see if we can enlarge this a little bit for you guys. Alright, so the reason why this thing is loose in here, come on, hold still, is the little tiny cracks in the aluminum. There's one here, there's another one up here that's starting to form right there, and there's another one that's just starting to form here. And we can see it now because the dirt has been pushed into the cracks. That's why this is getting loose. It's just poor forging of the aluminum, I guess. So that's another reason to use the JB Weld, is to kind of reinforce it and keep the crack from spreading. And then we'll just take the X-Acto again and a braid around the edge and give it something to stick to. Try to apply it as evenly as possible too, so it doesn't create a balancing issue, although the center point of attachment probably means that it's not going to affect balance that much. We're going to have to tweak and bend these anyways, because I know one of the blades is horribly bent. You can tell by how it sits. Like this is bent and this one's not. And yeah, well, it's a $10 fan. What do you expect? Try to get it so that it sits symmetrically. Okay, anyways, I'm getting distracted. You can also tell by how it sits on my workbench here that it's sitting crooked, so it's not very flat. That bothers me. I'm getting distracted again. Alright. Let's abrade this. Isn't this exciting? This is just the most exciting part of the job. Or not. This pulley is already pretty rough. Oh, I see why they bent it. Because if you bend it so that it's straight, it's really freaking loose in there. Alright. Guys who had this fan last were just all sorts of half-assed. They didn't oil the motor, they just painted it so it would look pretty so they could sell it. That's why it didn't sell, because somebody probably turned it on and went, no, something ain't right here. Alright. So let me go get the JB Weld and mix it up, and then we'll apply it. Well, this is disconcerting. Looking for the JB Weld, I've discovered that somebody ran it out and did not reorder it. And that someone would have not been me. And there's only another one person that works here, so obviously they ran out of it and didn't tell me. Or they're hiding it, whichever. Anyway, in lieu of that, something that will work just as well is the Bob Smith Industries Quick Cure Epoxy. It's a 5-minute, 2-part epoxy. It's pretty damn strong, and it dries with a little bit of flexibility too, so we can use this since the blades will be flexing. It will give a lesser tendency for the JB Weld that would have been there to crack. So we're going to use this instead, hopefully with equal results. Mix it 50-50. Mix it all up. And you can tell you have it mixed right because it starts to get tacky. There we go. Starting to get nice and tacky. Alright. So, I'm holding this here because it has a higher tendency to drip if I do this. This stuff drips more. So, I'm more inclined to do this. Smudge it around the edge here. Less likelihood of it dripping on the mat if the mat isn't in the way. You get what I'm saying. Again, this is the exciting part of it. Good thing is that this dries quickly. And we're going to try to apply as much as evenly as possible, so again we don't encounter balancing issues, though I don't think it will. Okay, and then we'll just flip this over real quick and apply a little bit to the top side right where the cracks are. Being very careful not to get any down in the screw shaft bearing where it's going to be hell to get this thing back on. I can hear something dripping. Oh, sorry, I'm getting this out of view of the camera here. We're just going to continuously mix it and twist it around and apply it until it starts to harden. Starting to get a little tacky here. Okay, so we're going to pause for a little bit while I let this thing dry. Also, while it's drying, I'm going to try to clean up the case a little bit. And then once this has had a chance to harden, we'll put it back together and see how it runs. Well, while the epoxy setting, this is as good a time as any to deal with the problem of the electricals. Like the destroyed wire here. I think I'll just trim that piece out and heat shrink it together after soldering it. And then we'll get a new cord to put in here. So that's simple and straightforward enough. I'm just going to cut the wire at the point where it's smashed, strip it back, copper still looks good, there's no oxidation in it. Alright, I'm going to go get some heat shrink tubing. The magic of video editing. Okay, this needs to be cut down a little bit. This just fits, which will be nice. And I'm just going to mash the two wires together, twisting slightly so they bond, compress them so they stay together, solder the piss out of it, cover it with the heat shrink, and then shrink the heat shrink. And that should give us a good bond that's safe. Alright, let's let that cool. I want to go one step further, make sure the heat shrink fits. Compress it while it's cooling. Make sure it's the diameter of the insulation. Alright, now we'll just slide that guy over. Alright, and then we can heat that mess with the butt of the soldering iron, which is hot enough to melt it, but not, or hot enough to shrink it, but not hot enough to melt it. So now we've got a nice clean bond there that's much safer. So now let's get to replacing the cord. We have to pull the strain relief out, which is, you can use channel locks for that. Make sure they're good channel locks. These ones aren't that great, but they still work. Get the two sections of the strain relief apart. And then here's our entry point here. Okay, so these are the two wire nuts that hold the AC line cord. Let's just undo these. Pull the old cord out, and let me go fetch a new one. Okay, so new line cord in hand. We're just going to strip it, get it ready for use here. Don't do like I do. Make sure to feed it through the hole you plan to put it through. I've done that so many times where I've attached the line cord to the item without feeding it through the hole, and as I go to solder it up, I go, damn it, I forgot to feed it through the hole. So pay attention to that. I am guilty of that many times over. So let's feed it through the hole, and let's twist it around our wires. Let's put our wire nut back on. Wire number 2. I'd play music or something, but then the copyright Nazis would get me. Yeah, let's put, it doesn't want to stay on there. Okay, when you get a wire nut that doesn't want to stay on, tin the wire. That always helps. Always there's something for the threads to grip. There we go. All right. So get it where you want it as far as tucking all this in here. And then, let's see. Now where'd my strain relief go? Here we go. The best way to get these back in with a fresh cord, get the wire firmly planted in there, and then using your channel locks, clamp it down so it pinches without pinching your fingers. That sucks. Don't do that. Okay, and now holding it with your channel locks, squeeze it and wedge it in there. And then if you'd like, make it extra secure, stick a screwdriver in at the entry point and pry just ever so slightly. Don't twist because you'll nick the insulation. And voila. So now we've got a nice new cord that doesn't have a scary end on it. Nice and fresh here. Alright, let's check on our blades. So our blades are coming along nicely. The epoxy is hardened, still has a little bit of tackiness to it, so we'll wait a couple more minutes. Otherwise, looks like it's coming together well. And then we can reassemble it. Just going to wait a little bit longer, make sure that's happy, and we'll go from here. Alright, the blades look good, so let's start putting stuff back together. Here's the grill that our motor is mounted on. Little piece here. Used to go together. We'll worry about that in a second. Trying to think here. Definitely the outside. Alright. Sorry, it's early morning. Not awake yet. Let's feed our new cord through. Let's feed our switch box and our motor through. Let's put our... This is going to be hard with only... Nope. One hand free. Let's tuck all this back in here if we can. It's a big if. Try not to pinch that wire. Obviously got pinched before. This isn't a very good design. I'm not sure why they did it this way. Probably because it was cheap. I would have made this switch box thing a little bit bigger. Let's make sure nothing's getting pinched. Up.
Hi.
Good morning. Okay, so I had to cut the video short previously because I had a customer walk in. So it's the next day. I've had an opportunity to let the epoxy sit overnight. I reassembled the blades. You can see that that's in there. Has a nice spin down time to it. Turned out really good. So now we kind of have to balance the blades because, as you remember, it was really bad. And you can see just by kind of looking at it when I spin it, it's close. I got it close by eyeballing it. But really the way to check it is to put it back in the housing, take the front grill off and check the blade clearances and see how badly it shakes. So let's get it back in the housing and see what happens. Okay, so here it is back in the housing. Now the way that I do this and check for wobble and stuff is I put it at an angle like this, and I kind of establish a line of horizon, and I watch as the blades pass by that line of horizon, and I see how it's off. Now you can do this by spinning, but the way I like to do it is with a variac. Turn the voltage up really low, and just get it to rotate. This may seem asinine, but you stick your finger out until a blade just starts to hit, and then you know that's the one that sticks out. Let me put this down, and or actually I can probably just tweak and bend this since it is aluminum. It's kind of hard to do this and hold the camera at the same time, but let's spin it again. Still got that one. Alright, so that one's really stubborn. Just so I can show you which one it is, we're going to get a Sharpie and just very carefully stick the pin in there until it marks it. We'll pause the video. Actually, we'll turn the machine off so I can show you the mark. It's that blade right there with the little Sharpie mark on it. So we need to tweak this one a little bit so that it will not wobble so much, and then we'll try it again. Okay, so we tweaked it a little bit. Let's try it again. Pretty good. We got one that's a little bit off. We can see that the tips of the blades aren't quite right though. So let's tweak them a little bit. Yeah, it's still not great. It's still a little bent. Let's see if it shakes. Turn up the voltage a little bit. Actually does pretty good. Minimum vibration. That's at 110 volts. It's 117. That's on the high speed. Still minimum shake. Let's turn it down to low. Still very little vibration, puts out a good volume of air. So I think this thing's done. We can button it back up. See how long it takes it to spin down. Pretty good. Alright, let's get it back together. So there it is, all back together. I don't really care for the red paint job. It was originally the Lasko blue color there all around. I would have liked that better, but you know what, it doesn't look bad. Obviously works really well. So this may end up as a bedroom or a shop fan or something like that, because it's only about 15 inches. It's light. So yeah, I kind of like it. Good $10 find. So if you've got one of these Laskos, I don't know what the model is, maybe somebody more knowledgeable can chime in here. This is how to service one. Kind of a nice little piece. Wish I had my JB weld to do the thing instead of the epoxy. I think that's a little bit stronger, but worst comes to worst, I can always break it away and redo it. Very cool. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry it had to be split up into 2 parts. More stuff to come later. Probably more fan stuff. Might even dig into some of my little portable TV projects. I've got a couple of TVs from the 70s and 80s that are of the 10-inch variety that I kind of want to get into. Color stuff. So don't work on a lot of TVs much anymore around here. They don't really come in that often, but I do have a couple of my own. So maybe we'll see those later on. But anyway, thanks for watching. More stuff to come soon.